final question here. When it comes to the propaganda war, we mentioned earlier that there is some waning support in parts of Western Europe and definitely in America as well. A lot of it is, you have to say, the Russians, they have their active measures, so to say. They are very offensive in their influence operation in various countries. How do you think that we have managed to counter this? Are we doing a good job on the propaganda war front? If not, what could we do better?
The Russians have discovered that there's a bunch of crazy people in Europe. They don't believe COVID existed. They believe in America is evil. They believe the Russians are. They believe every conspiracy theory. And this is their audience. And there's lots of those people we can't reach. There's people who truly believe Donald Trump is the epitome of a sexy, fit man, like a sportsman. It's like, the guy cannot even walk stairs up and down. So there's a group, a part of society we cannot reach anymore. But for the center, it's imperative that our politicians go out there and publicly state, like right now in the United States, there's Republicans and Democrats who go on TV and say, we have to support Ukraine. Losing that will be 10 times worse than Afghanistan. And we need, also I see in Poland, there's now a Ukrainian-Polish conflict about grain and other things. And I understand that there's a difficult election in Poland being fought. But once that is over, someone needs to go out there and tell the Polish people that the Ukrainians are fighting for us. If they lose, we are gonna fight this. Look at a city like Marinka that the Russians flattened. If the Ukrainians lose, this is what Lublin will look like. This is what Warsaw will look like. Have you seen Bucha? This is what the Russians will do once they reach Lodz. So the European the Baltics understand it, most Polish understand it. Western Europeans don't really understand it because they're like, yeah, the Russians. Western Europeans need to be told by their politicians. Have you remember what your grandparents told you about the Nazi occupation of France? This is what Russian occupation is like. They're not doing it to Western European politicians because they have limited political capital and they don't want to spend it on that. You don't win votes with a negative, truthful explanation. Eastern Europe is further ahead in this truth.
But we had a backset in Slovakia, for example, a few days ago. So we are not completely immune to these problems.
Yes, the thing is that Fico was elected, but just with 23%. So it means that 77% of Slovakians didn't like his attitude. The hope is that he won't be able to form a coalition. There is a possibility that the other parties will say, you know what? Each of us will take a little step back from what we demand and want and make a coalition. Like in Germany, if there would be elections in Germany now, the right-wing AfD and the Linke would have enough votes that would force SPD, CDU, Greens and FDP to form a grand coalition of the democratic forces against the extremes. So you have elections in Poland. We don't know what will be the result. But in the end, those parties, in Slovakia, these parties have 77%, have to band together to keep the enemies of Europe, democracy and freedom out of power.
When we look at propaganda also, a lot of these interactions are taking place online today. And we have, for example, NAFO, that is this community that groups together pro-Ukrainian forces. Do you think that NAFO has been a good part of this, that they are somehow bringing awareness to how important the Ukraine issue is?
Yes, and one of the most important, just for people that don't know, NAFO are just all volunteers that have banded together to counter Russian propaganda on Twitter and other social media. And their main function is not to basically dispel Russian propaganda, because all these lies and this nonsense, it's really difficult to dispel.
It's better to ridicule it.
Ridicule it and go after the people who spread it. Because if some crazy loon or some American right-wing personality or some absolute creep from Europe is spreading absolute nonsense about Ukrainians or Poland or people that help Ukraine, if he gets ridiculed and made fun of constantly, the worst thing for a radical or for a creep or a loon is to be fun of. Their self-confidence cannot handle that because they don't have no self-confidence.
Unfortunately, we're starting to run out of time here, so just one final question, a 40-second answer maybe.
Okay, sorry.
If you look into the future, do you think that Ukraine has a chance to win this war?
Yes. Ukraine has a chance to win, but it's so much more bloody than we all wanted it to be. And the problem I have is that the Russians sent their worst people to the front, from the alcoholics, the unemployed, the old, the poor people. Basically everyone that Putin wants to get rid of. The Russian prisons are empty. They're all at the front. And Ukraine is losing its best. So Ukraine is losing not just cities, villages. It's losing the people that made a nation, the creatives, the workers, the intelligent people. I just read today about a guy who had founded a company about genetics and was a scientist and was doing research, and now he's dead. So Ukraine is losing, like, I keep going back when I hear this about Poland in World War II. When the Germans arrived, the first thing they executed was all the professors, the teachers, the writers, the intellectual, basically the people that carried the culture and advanced the nation in science and in everything that was giving Poland a future in different spheres. And Ukraine is losing that too. The Russians aren't executing them right now. They're killing them on the front because those people have the heart and the courage to go and fight. And what the Russians sent to the front is like in the Soviet times, just masses of whatever that Putin doesn't care about. If the Russians lose 500,000 of their workers from the agricultural sector, Putin doesn't care. Can replace with tractors. But Ukraine is losing the human capital that are so important for its future. So we have to help the Ukrainians win this war. They can win it, but we need to do more. Each of us needs to pressure our politicians to help Ukraine more with weapons, equipment, and we have to stand by Ukraine. And even if we have some squabbles about different stuff between Ukraine and Poland or Czechia or other countries, if the Ukrainians lose, all of our lives will be so much worse. So please help Ukraine.
Hopefully, if we'll speak again, if you'll be back in a couple of months, the situation will be better. But for today, we will have to end it here. Thank you very much for coming and hope to see you again.